Well, the way that I start these things is I just start them. I don't really care. There's no big hard entry or anything else, and we just kind of get going. This is Georgi Ivanov with the best wrestler in Council Bluffs in multiple locations now. How are you today, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
I'm excited for the success that you have had with this program and the coaching and the teaching that you're able to do with young people and the success that they're having, because I see, you know, in some of the videos that you put up online of just, you know, how far some of these folks are getting. Where did the idea of creating a program like The Best Wrestler come from?
Great question. So, you know, I've wrestled my whole life. My father was my coach growing up, and we come from, for those of you that don't know, we come from Bulgaria originally. I came here when I was 16 years old for my senior year of high school.
Right.
And so, by the way, before I get into it, I love the fire.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great location.
It is.
We've talked about it before. The place is called The Acres. It's just east of Council Bluffs off Railroad Avenue. TheAcresVenue.com is a website. Highly recommend it for whatever event you might have. So there we go.
Great plug. Okay, so back to it. But yeah, so I've wrestled my whole life, and you know, you come to a point where you learn, you grow. You know, you do your best to achieve your goals and dreams, and there comes a point in anyone's journey that you just kind of, you know, you transition a little bit. You transition from growth to contribution, right? So I got to a point of my life where I was done competing, and you got to do something with that experience and that knowledge. If you don't, you know, the way, at least that's how I thought of it. If you don't pass it down, what good does it do me? You know, at that point I'm done, right? So I started getting a lot of inquiries about doing private lessons, and you know, I did a lot of private lessons, one-on-one training, and I felt like I was helping these kids. I felt like I was helping these families. You know, I was getting good feedback, and then we got to the point where I didn't have any plans on doing a club, or I didn't have any plans on starting anything like this. But what happened is, actually, my father was in Idaho, and he was working there, and he had an unfortunate situation that came about. He was under contract for 10 years, and 5 years into it, the person that my dad was working for, he made his son a world team member. He represented Team USA at the World Championships, earned him a full scholarship for Division I, and then because the guy's kid was done competing at the club and was ready to move on, that guy just fired my father. And so when that happened, you know, we sat down and we started thinking, okay, what can we do? I mean, we know wrestling, we know we can have a successful program if we start working together. We know we can impact kids and provide value. And you know, at first we didn't have a building. It was COVID. You know, we didn't really have a whole lot of, we weren't in a place to purchase a building yet, or we thought so. And I called a few local wrestling clubs and asked them to work with them and partner with them and coach with them. And they didn't agree on working with us. They had their own things happening, which I respect. And then that kind of forced us to get creative. And so we ran into a building that was for sale. And those guys were amazing. It was the old Masonic Lodge on Highway 6 towards McClellan. And those guys were amazing to work with. We ended up acquiring the building, followed by 40 days of working, you know, fixing up, painting, adding wrestling mats, etc., building a wrestling club in the middle of a cornfield. And we launched it. And that's how we started.
Well, being out there, it is kind of a strange location when you think about the success that you're having now. That, I mean, you're out in rural Iowa,
Yeah.
With this type of thing. How did you get the students there?
You know, I had a following shortly after the Olympics, right? And I had already worked for a year or so with some kids on private lessons. And those kids were having a lot of success, although they were wrestling for other clubs at the time. And when we announced that we're going to be opening a location, those kids, it was a no-brainer for them, right? Because they were utilizing me on the side, so to speak, anyways. So they committed to us full time, and then that followed by more kids coming in, and you know, those results speak for themselves, and kids just kept coming in, and here we are today.
You've been in a lot of different places with this sport. The folks that live here and live in the state of Iowa love wrestling.
Absolutely.
How does it compare with other parts of the country? I mean, is it what we all think it is, that, you know, this is the best place for someone that wants to wrestle to go through the high school programs, or does that exist in other parts of the country too?
You know, the Midwest definitely has a reputation for strong wrestling, and it is one of the best places to wrestle, that's for sure. You know, there are states out there that are strong consistently, such as Pennsylvania, New Jersey, you know, Illinois. These are tough states to compete against, but Iowa is always up there. You know, always top 5 state, I would say, in the country, in recent years anyways. So yeah, it's definitely living up to its strong reputation.
So going from your facility in McClellan, now you're headquartered in Council Bluffs, but you're opening up some different locations as well. What was involved with making that move?
Yeah, great question. So we obviously outgrew that building. It was little over a mat space. It wasn't big enough for us to handle the kids that we have. And another thing that we found is we were having kids drive. We still have kids drive about 2 hours each way, and a lot of the kids were coming from Nebraska. It just makes sense because it's a you know, Omaha metro area is a larger population. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of kids come from Nebraska, and we started finding ways to expand. And originally, you know, the first thing that we did, I think, was, I'm trying to get my timeline right here, but I started thinking about a new location, and I think, I can't remember which one came first, so I might be wrong on this, but don't quote me on this. But it was pretty much during the same time where we make it work, where we opened the location in Elkhorn at the UBT Sports Complex, and then we developed a partnership with Iowa West Foundation to be in the Iowa West Fieldhouse, which has been tremendous. That building is it's a state-of-the-art facility. Not very many kids get to experience that type of facility for their youth clubs. Right, and so our goal is to work as many kids as we possibly can in the community, get as many coaches to come and help and be involved in one way or another with us, and other clubs as well. They're more than welcome to. You know, wrestling is a tricky sport because there's a lot of alpha male mentalities.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have
also in the stands. Yeah.
Right. You have direct confrontation on the mats constantly.
Right.
And so it's easy to get competitive and sometimes forget the bigger picture. Right. For us, we want to make this area a central location for wrestling in the Midwest. Right. And so sometimes it's hard to work with other clubs, but I would love to get more clubs and more opportunities and more coaches and more kids through the Iowa West Fieldhouse, one way or another.
How many kids are going through your facilities now?
We have about 200 kids.
Really?
Yeah. Obviously, they come and they go just because it's seasonal. Kids play other sports. Some wrestle in the summer, some don't. Some wrestle in, you know, high school kids in Nebraska can now really compete. Cannot wrestle at a club during their actual high school season. They're not allowed to. Kids from Iowa can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, but Nebraska are not allowed to. So when Nebraska high school season begins, we lose the high school kids from Nebraska as a club.
Okay. I'm actually, with the sun going the way it is, I'm going to put my sunglasses back on again so I can still see it. And you know.
I'm fortunate. I got my back.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's just the way it is, the time of year and where we're sitting and everything, there's just a hole in the trees and the sun goes right in between there for just a little while. But let's talk a little bit more about you, George, because you, as you mentioned, you finished your wrestling career in high school in Council Bluffs, wrestling for Lewis Central.
That's right.
And what was that experience like, finishing up one final year for Lewis Central? Is pretty powerful wrestling program. So you come in there, what was that experience like for you?
It was amazing. You know, as a 16-year-old moving across the world, and I didn't really speak English, I knew that well, right? I knew one person here when I moved. And I've been so blessed to meet people that have helped me along the way. You know, some people that have helped me that I first knew Kurt Wall. Kurt Wall was the person that kind of started this whole thing and brought me here. So I'm really thankful for him. And then it was Trevor Carrott, who was my high school coach as well. He was the high school coach at the time at Lewis Central. But, you know, he became much, much more than that. Him and his wife, Carol, they became much, much more than that. They're like my American family. So, you know, I've lived with them. Trevor became best man in my wedding. We're business partners. You know, we've done a lot of things together. But wrestling, you know, coming here, not knowing what I'm getting myself into, I'm so fortunate to land at Lewis Central with the people that I met, and the teammates that I had at the time. They helped me so much with learning English, not feeling alone, just including me and involving me in everything. It was amazing. It was amazing. I had that 1 year of my senior year at Lewis Central was a great experience for me.
And what year was that?
I graduated in 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some pretty good wrestlers.
Yes.
Going through the program back then.
For sure.
So you finish up high school, and it's time for you to look at the next level.
Yeah.
What was that process like for you to be able to pick a college or some of the different places you were being recruited by? What was all that about?
So I started getting, you know, I was doing pretty well, and I started getting some letters from colleges. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea who was looking into me, how the whole recruiting process worked, just what Division 1, 2, 3 was, right? I didn't know any of that. And so I trusted a lot. And you know, there was so much uncertainty. I didn't even know what was going to happen because I was on a student visa just through high school. So originally the plan was, you know, I'm just going to go back to Bulgaria and move on. Well, when I started getting these letters, I started getting scholarship offers, right? And I quickly realized that if I ever wanted to get a college education from the US, now was the time.
Okay.
And so I called my parents, and I told them that I have to take this opportunity and see what it's going to lead to. And I told them I'm staying here for college. And you know, the first 4 years, I only saw my parents for 15 days.
Really?
Yeah, it was tough. And I remember back then, you know, it was I lived on a farm, so we had I don't even know if it was a speed dial, but very limited access to them. I didn't really speak to them that much. It was expensive to. I remember there was minutes that you buy on the phone, and
you can buy those cards and
right.
punch in about 40 numbers in order to be able to use them.
But internationally, they go so fast.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't able to speak to them that often. And so, anyways, I called them, told them I'm getting offers and, you know, full scholarships, and I trusted Trevor a lot with that decision at the time. And although I was getting looked at from some Division I schools, I remember him guiding me towards UNO, University of Nebraska Omaha, with legendary coach Mike Denny, who I wrestled for, and he ended up marrying me and my wife at our wedding. And then I was his associate head coach down at Maryville. I coached with him as well. But yeah, so that's kind of how I made the decision to go and wrestle on the next level.
Where were some of the other offers coming from?
Oh gosh, I had some from Ohio, Iowa State, some smaller schools, Boise State.
Iowa State had to have been a hard one to turn down. I mean, that's a really powerful wrestling program.
Right. I knew nothing about it. I mean, I know it's hard to imagine this, but think about it. You know, if you grow up in the U.S. and you're following these schools and, you know, media and these college teams, and there's traditions, and you become a fan and you follow it, right? And it's huge. But coming over from Bulgaria, I had no idea what Iowa State was, or what UNO was, or what any of these schools were. I just knew that I could not afford to go to college. I was on a student visa, and the only way I go to college is if I have a full scholarship. and which I had multiple, but Trevor's guidance was, and it made sense. UNO at the time it was a powerhouse. They were national champions in Division II, and again, I didn't know what Division I or II was. Coach Denny, I had done a few workouts at UNO when I was in high school, so I connected with him. We had a great relationship. I loved the campus. I loved the coaches. I loved some of the guys on the team. It was close to Council Bluffs, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a no-brainer. I didn't even take any visits. I was just like, "Yep, I'm gonna go wrestle at UNO." Yeah.
So, talk about your career then at UNO. What the process of making the jump from high school wrestling now, going into college wrestling. I'm guessing just instantly the speed of what's going on has to kind of hit you right in the face.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was good. One of the obviously English was tough. The language was a little bit of a barrier. I had to study quite a bit more. The biggest, you're gonna get a laugh out of this, the biggest change and the biggest challenge for me was my weight. I wrestled 119 pounds my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I was recruited to go and wrestle 125 in college. And I was supposed to get on campus, and at the time they had a guy that was a 2 times national champion at 125, upperclassman, and he was supposed to move up a weight. And I was supposed to come in as a freshman and start at 125.
Okay, so he's going up.
Correct.
Because of the success he had at 125.
Well, he just couldn't make the weight anymore.
Okay.
He just got bigger.
Okay.
And so they needed a 25 pounder like right now.
Right.
And so I get to campus right in August, and by the time season actually started, about 2-3 months later, I had gained 40 pounds. I grew 2 inches and 2 shoe sizes. I had a really late growth spurt. Yeah, and I remember going to Coach Denny's office, and I sat down with him and I said, "Coach, I don't think I can make 125 pounds." I mean, at that point I was weighing about 145.
That's a lot
150.
to cut. And plus, if you're doing that and you're working out all the time, that's not fat you're losing.
Yeah.
That's
So,
muscle.
Correction, I gained 40 pounds in the first year, and I'll get to that. But I had gained some weight in the first 2-3 months where I wasn't able to make 125.
Okay.
Right? So I'll get back to the 40 pounds. So then I was forced to redshirt. Coach Jenny was not too happy with me. We didn't really talk a whole lot that whole redshirt year. And next year comes in, and so in 1 year I had gained 40 pounds. So I couldn't even make 133 anymore, 141, 49. I jumped 3 weight classes. So the very next year I ended up wrestling 157. Yeah. And
Was there somebody already wrestling at that weight?
yeah, I ended up winning the wrestle off, and I actually took second at NCAAs as a freshman.
Okay.
Yeah, so it ended up good. And when I started winning, my first varsity match was at the national team duels, I remember. It was in Iowa. And I wrestled 3 ranked guys in my first 4 matches. Number 1 guy, number 3 guy, number 7 guy, and some guy that was not seeded. And I wrestled 4 matches, and I went undefeated. Those were my first varsity matches.
Wow.
And right after that, Coach Denny started talking to me again. Yeah. So.
Oh, that is awesome. So what's the difference for people who aren't as familiar with the sport from wrestling down at 40 pounds lighter to where you were at? Was there differences in technique? What was the difference that adjustments that you personally had to make in the style that you took into it with?
Great question. So yes, there are differences, definitely. There is, lighter guys move a lot quicker. I'm going to use some terminology, but they scramble more, which basically means they roll around a whole lot. And the heavier you get, typically you eliminate some of that. The pace becomes a little bit slower. Guys, I was a shorter guy for my weight class. So guys were standing up taller. I was used to the faster pace. So this was actually, besides strength at the beginning, it was easier for me to wrestle the upper weight classes. I was quicker. I felt more technical than a lot of those guys. And once I figured out how to manage the match with stronger guys for my weight class, I ended up having a lot of success. But, you know, usually the heavier you get, I would say the easier it gets, a little bit.
Would you say then that guys that are used to wrestling at that weight class and, you know, had been already very experienced in that, your technique being lighter and making that jump so quickly, you had developed speed that maybe they hadn't developed.
Right. And technique.
That's actually kind of cool.
I think the skill set is mostly what made the difference. But yes, yep.
Well, we finally got rid of the sun. I can take these sunglasses
Good.
back off again because it's going down back behind the trees. So that's what happened as you were a freshman. Moving on through your college career, when did you start to realize that long term you could be successful, because eventually you end up in the Olympics? So when did that start to appear in your mind?
You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in an environment where Olympics was the goal. You know, I was around in Bulgaria. I grew up around a lot of Olympians, Olympic champions, world team members, world medalists. That was just the norm for me, and so that was the vision, that was the goal, right? When I came to the U.S., things shifted a little bit. I kind of got away from that vision because I was only wrestling, for the most part, I was only wrestling folk style in college, right? And I hadn't wrestled freestyle, I believe, in like 5 years during my whole collegiate career. And so what actually happened is, you know, I went on college. I went to UNO for 3 years total, so 1 year redshirt and wrestled for 2. And then they dropped wrestling there. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
So when they dropped wrestling, I transferred to Boise State in Idaho to finish my college career.
You
And
mentioned your dad being in Idaho. Did he
Correct.
follow you, or did you follow him there, and that's why you went to Boise State?
great question. I followed them.
Okay.
So my dad had just gotten a job. My dad used to be the Bulgarian national team coach for women for 3 age groups: cadets, juniors, and seniors. So pretty much anything over 15.
Okay.
He was the head coach for women wrestling in Bulgaria for a few years. And then he got a job under FILA, which was the World Wrestling Organization. And he was one of handful guys, coaches, that was, his title was literally expert coach. And his job was to go to developing countries in their Olympic training centers and teach them how to develop Olympians, how to improve their systems, ways of training, athlete selection, you know, everything that goes into it. And so he actually lived in Africa for a couple of years. But my point is, he got a work visa as extraordinary abilities. They have that, it's called O1, it's immigrations, but he got a O1 visa, which is for extraordinary abilities that he can contribute in the United States. And he got a work visa, and he moved to Idaho to coach. And so when he literally got there the same year that they dropped wrestling at UNO. And so when that happened, I was already a two-time All-American, and Boise State called me, offered a full ride, and my family was already there. I had been away from them for 4 years. And the way I looked at that was, this is a great opportunity for me to spend 2 years closer to my family. And so I took it. And that's when I met my wife, finished my bachelor's degree there. And so back to the vision with the Olympics. Right after that, I had limited opportunities, because once your student visa expires or you're done with school, you either have to continue to at an upper level, so like master's degree, so you have to either stay at school, or you need to get an employer to sponsor you and apply for your work visa, or you go back to Bulgaria or to your country. So fortunately for me, I did both. I had not both. I got a job. Coach Denny called me again, and he asked me to go down to St. Louis and coach with him, because that's where he had taken a job and started a program at Maryville University. And he asked me to go coach with him. In the beginning, I worked at the admissions office, and I enrolled in school. I started getting my master's degree. So I was a full-time. I worked in the admissions office. I was a wrestling coach, and I was getting my master's degree, and I was still training, and I had just gotten married at that same time too. So there's a
He had a full life.
full life, that's for sure. And so when I graduated Boise State and I started coaching down in Maryville, I was still active, right? I'm still in best shape of my life. I started wrestling with a lot of those college guys that I was coaching, and I was beating them up. And one day they challenged me. That same year, first year, they challenged me. They said, "Coach, you're so good, or you're doing so good here. Why don't you go and wrestle freestyle again?" Because I hadn't wrestled freestyle in 5 years. They said, "Why don't you go and enter the Dave Schultz international tournament and wrestle for Bulgaria?" And that was at Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center in January. And I said, "No way, you gotta be, I'm done. I'm done competing. I'm just coaching." And deep inside though, I really, really wanted to keep wrestling and see how I would do again in freestyle. It's a different style. That's what I grew up doing, was freestyle. I had to adapt when I came here my senior year into folk style. I have never wrestled folk style before in my life. And so I tried that, I did it. I ended up winning that tournament. It was an international tournament. I beat the guy that took third in the Olympics and third at Worlds in the finals. I beat him 5-2. And so at that point, Bulgaria called me. They said, "Hey, come back, wrestle at nationals, try to make the world team." I did that. I made the world team in 2015. And, and then in 16, I took second at the world qualifier to qualify for the Olympics and went on and wrestled in Rio.
That is just a phenomenal story, and I'm full of questions as far as, because I know that there's a big, big difference between collegiate wrestling and Olympic wrestling.
For sure.
It's something entirely different, and the energy has to be completely different with the competitors, and even down to the uniform. You're not wearing headgear,
right.
Now when it comes to that, and it had to almost feel like you're driving without a seatbelt.
Yeah.
when you're out there doing that. So, I've never had a chance to ask this question of anybody. You're in Rio, and you're walking with the team, you're going through opening ceremonies, and I'm assuming that the emotion at some point just has to hit you of where you're at and what is happening in your life right then. Can you put that into words? Is there a way to describe what you were feeling then?
So I went to the closing ceremony because wrestling is one of the last sports. But yeah, walking through the Olympic Village, stepping on the mat, and then walking down the Olympic Village with my father. It's fulfilling. When I finally had a chance to be by myself, there might have been windy and I had some tears in my eyes, maybe. But it was a dream come true for me. Although I didn't win the gold medal, but just being there was a dream come true, lifelong dream for me. I don't know if I can describe the feeling besides feeling fulfilled. Feeling like a dream had come true, and it was the highest of highs for me personally. Right, for me it was a once in a lifetime thing. Some athletes are fortunately enough to experience it multiple times, and the majority of the athletes never experience it, but it was definitely fulfilling. That's the word that comes to mind. Yeah.
So that concludes. You come back, still coaching in Maryville?
Yeah. Yes, and so I had, right after that, I had been to Bulgaria for 3 months training, super busy, coaching, recruiting, online school, graduate school. My wife working 3 part-time jobs at one point. It was very difficult for us, and so we had to sit down and have a conversation about the future and how are we planning on continuing to do life together, right? And it was one of those things where we were both ready to kind of move on, and we had 2 choices. We either go back to what felt like home for me, which is back here in this area, or back to Idaho, right? Because she's from Idaho. And we both decided that we were gonna come here and try to do something. And so, you know, as an athlete, you go through, when you are done competing at, you know, at a high level, when you're done competing, whether you achieve your goals or not, at some point when you're done and it sets in and it hits you, you almost feel a sense of depression because you're done. You know, I've identified my whole life as a wrestler. And now I was trying to do something with business outside of wrestling, and you're no one, right? At least that's how you feel. You're no longer George the wrestler. Now you're just George just trying to do something with work. And it's a huge change. And so I went through some hard time mentally of having to figure out what we're doing, what we're gonna do, what am I gonna end up doing, how am I gonna function without competing, and so once we came here again, Trevor helped me. We actually stayed with them for a year. We didn't have a house. We sold our house in St. Louis, and we came back here and we tried to figure out what we're doing, and lived with Trevor for close to a year, and yeah, the rest is history. But yeah.
Well, you've had a tremendous amount of success with, I mean, you've got another business besides, you know, the Best Wrestler that has been very successful as well. And people really look up to you in this community. They are, I mean, you have established yourself as one of the leaders in this community. And I don't think that was ever really a goal for you, but it's just kind of natural fit of where you slide into that. And you're impacting so many young people that are coming through your program. And I've seen you've started doing some video shorts that I see online that I'm a big fan of.
Thank you.
Because you're, a lot of times you're not talking to the kids, you're talking to their parents. And you're saying, okay, you know, you've got a young person that wants to get into this. Here's some of the things you need to be paying attention to, and how can you best support them, and the different things that you can do. And I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, that, and using technology in a way that is benefiting everybody, and just moving alongside of that. So my guess is that competitiveness you talked about still coming out, just in a different way.
For sure.
Just in a different way.
And first of all, thank you. You know, when you're always in the trenches, it's kind of hard sometimes to evaluate what you're doing, or if there is, or if you're even impacting people in the right way, or if you're even being noticed. So I really appreciate you saying that. But yes, I'm always trying to innovate, always trying to figure out how I can maximize my productivity, how I can maximize the reach and impact that I can have on kids. And you know, not too long ago, I came to the realization that in order for me to impact kids in the sport of wrestling, I must educate the parents, because it doesn't matter how much the kids like working with us, or how much they connect with us, or how much they see value in us. The parents are the ones that are still making the decisions. And a lot of times those parents are misinformed. And there's a lot of false prophets out there in the sport of wrestling.
Oh, they're out there in just about any industry. I can.
Yes, and the problem is those are the loudest sometimes.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem is they're misinforming and miseducating parents. And so I've made it a promise to myself and a commitment that regardless of what happens with anything that I do, I will try to educate as many parents as I can. So whether they come to us or not, I honestly that's not the priority. Meaning my job is to educate the parents and so they can make a decision that's best for them and their athlete. If that's coming to the Best Wrestler, great, we would love to work with them. If that is going somewhere else, great, as long as they're making an educated decision for themselves. And so when I realized that the parents are the ones that are driving the bus in a way, that's why I started making those shorts and those videos online, because now I'm going to be working with a lot of parents. Yep.
It's it's fascinating to me because, you know, I wasn't much of an athlete back in school. I would run in a straight line and turn left. I was okay at track, you know, but that was about it. But my career for a long time was sportscasting, and part of it was, you know, I have been at state wrestling tournament broadcasting. The school that I went to in Iowa didn't have wrestling as a program. We were a very, very small school, so we didn't have it. So the second wrestling meet that I ever went to, I was broadcasting.
That's awesome.
I went to the first one knowing that I was going to have to. I was the backup to be doing this. I was at KMA at the time, and after I went to one, the very next time a broadcast came up, the guy wasn't there, and I had to go.
Wow.
So now I know nothing about it. I can describe what I'm looking at, but I don't know the terminology. I don't know anything about what it is that I'm talking about and trying to pull this whole thing together. So that's where my sports part comes in. So when you're talking about some of this different stuff, that's why I find it so fascinating, because I have only ever seen it from the outside. No experience as a wrestling athlete at all. It was never even an option for me. So it's making an impact on young people's lives, which I am a huge, huge fan of.
Absolutely.
Because it's ultimately, it's not about the success that they have on the wrestling mat. It's about the success that they have after wrestling is over with. That's where you measure just how successful are you with your program, because what are you turning these young men and women into?
That's right.
And that's where I know that you get a lot of satisfaction out of that, because with the amount of time that you've been in, have you even seen anybody come all the way through and are outside of the program now?
I personally have seen guys that I've worked with in college, because that was 10 years ago.
Right.
But with the best wrestler, we've had very limited amount of guys that have gone through the program and done, and now I can see what they're doing, just because the nature of, we're young as a club. We're 4 years into it. My father has been in the U.S. for about 15 years now, so he's seen some guys go through the program and through his system that we're currently implementing at the best wrestler. So we know that it's working. We know that it's successful. Now, this is a good opportunity for me to plug in what we're actually doing and what our vision is. I want to change the way youth sports are done. I think the system is broken. I think, if I pull myself out and I look at the 30,000 foot view, what I see, especially, I'm talking about the sport of wrestling right now, just because that's what I'm in. And why I think the system is broken. If you just watch and observe and notice what's happening, the way I see it is like this. You go to a bunch of wrestling tournaments, you see a bunch of coaches trying to prove who's the best coach. You see a bunch of kids, scrapping and wrestling and fighting and trying to do well. And they do that for about 3 months, because that's when wrestling season is. And then they're done and they move on. And they do that it's a cycle, right? Whether they're successful or not. Once they're done with high school, very few of them go on to college. Some of them quit the sport of wrestling. All of them, for the most part, lose track of or lose connection with the club coaches, for the most part, and they move on. And that's it. I think that is dysfunctional. I think that is not maximizing and not productive. So what I'm trying to do is this. We have 3 pillars now that we're focusing on. One is wrestling, because we know we can utilize the sport of wrestling to create great individuals. We know we can utilize the sport of wrestling to open doors and opportunities that were not present otherwise, just like for me personally in my life. And so we're utilizing wrestling as a tool to create opportunities and help these kids. Academics is a pillar. We want to make sure that if kids want to go to college, great, we can open doors for them and provide opportunities, whether that's me writing a recommendation letter to a college so they can get a scholarship, or us trying to make a connection so they can get into the trades, trade schools, whatever it may be. And the third pillar is a career. We want to make sure that every kid that goes through our club and they're with us and we connect with them, and they consider themselves a wrestler, now they're going to have a career and they don't have to worry about it. We can get them an internship, job shadowing, interview somewhere within our circle. And so once they establish themselves in the world, they can come back and give back to us in a way, whether it's monetary, whether it's volunteer time, whether it's come and talk to the group, or provide the next opportunity with an internship or with a job interview, somewhere, on one of our kids. And so we want to make sure that we close the circle and we never lose connection with the athletes and the kids and the individuals that we're developing, right? And if we can continue to do that, one, the community will ultimately benefit. Two, we're going to create a butterfly effect of outstanding individuals that are going to impact thousands of kids after that, or thousands of people after that. But I think that's going to be the most fulfilling part for me, is to see a youth organization handling youth sports as a tool to do that, to create great individuals in the community. That's the vision.
That's inspiring. I mean, that is legitimately inspiring.
Thank you.
I'm going to be 56 in a couple of weeks, and I want to go put on a singlet and go hit the mat right now. I mean, seriously, man, that is just,
Yeah.
And knowing what I know about you, this is something that I think you're going to be known for. And as the years go on, and as more and more young people turn into full-grown adults and start to have kids of their own, and you start to see the full cycle of everything, you're going to see the fruits of your labor. It's going to happen.
I hope so.
And I've been a big believer in sports for a long time if it's done correctly. And I've seen it done correctly in a lot of places. I've seen it done incorrectly in just about every sport.
Yes.
But I've also been inspired by a few coaches that have done things the right way. There's somebody not very far from here that I've always been a huge fan of, and I think she's retired now, but Gail Hardigan was a coach of a lot of sports and trainer, and I was just a huge fan of her. There's a college football coach named Ron Skipper that coached over at Central. That first time I met him, I said, all right, I have eligibility left, let's go hit somebody, and I'm in my 30s at that point. And what you're saying right there, same kind of thing. It inspires that same kind of feeling in me, and that's why I've always loved sports, for that, because it has the ability to do that. So I am thrilled that you agreed to come out and be a part of this. This little podcast we're doing sitting next to a fire. I never know how they're going to go. Because we'd visited before we got started. You said, hey, what are we going to talk about? Oh, we'll hit this and we'll hit that. I never know how these things are going to. The last one we just did with Dan Olson, and we started getting into philosophy and stoicism and all of that stuff. I never know. But this has been impressive, and I've really enjoyed my time with you.
Same.
And I'm looking forward to watching more and more success coming out there over at the Best Wrestler at your different locations. It's you're just another one of the reasons why I love this community.
Thank you so much.
Want to be here. He is Georgi Ivanov, and it is the Best Wrestler. How do folks find you? What's the website? If somebody wants to talk to you more about getting their young person involved, how do they do that?
Great. Well, before I get there, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Love the idea. You're doing great things. You're inspiring me as well. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, just thebestwrestler.com, thebestjujutsu.com. It's not hard to find me. Just search me on. I'm all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X now, all over. So yeah.
All right, Georgi Ivanov. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Appreciate
very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching this episode of Campfire Conversations. By the way, that is the name. People keep calling it Fireside Chat. No, I'm not Roosevelt. This is a Campfire Conversation. We'll be back with another episode very, very soon. Until then, take care.